Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, the exhausted pollster who's been crunching numbers for like 12 to 16 hours a day for the last 5 days in a row. And it's because we had a massive set of state polling, 10 states, and we actually now have 8 of the 10 out of them. Although, as of now, only 4 sets of crosstabs have been published. We're going to take a look at the numbers from all 8, and we'll dive into the crosstab for, let's just say, Arizona today, and take a little look like we did with Pennsylvania early in the week. We also, because it's Thursday, have our most recent national 2024 matchup numbers. So we're going to take a look at those crosstabs and get a state of the race check-in as well. From a high-level perspective, though, the race really looks close, but that is horrible news for Kamala Harris and her campaign. Here are the Real Clear Politics national numbers, and it's pretty much been steady at about Harris +2, which is only marginally worse than Clinton was doing 8 years ago. But the truth is that Clinton opened up towards the end in October, and this number here is going to get higher because the polling was way left of the actual results, which is about 2.3 points. Now, I don't think Harris's numbers here are going to move much more left. Every one of these pollsters recalls last cycle and the cycle before that being really horribly left. And I think what you're seeing is some of these people start to wake up and back off the ledge, especially Quinnipiac, who's been, I think they had like some Harris +6s and 7. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But they have Harris tie now. For Quinnipiac, who sometimes is like 12 points to left to show Harris tie, that's really incredible. CNN looks like it's getting back close to a tie with Harris +1. You know, we have our last week's result at Trump +2. Atlas Intel's poll, they should be coming out with a new one soon. Trump +3, and New York Times Siena at tie. New York Times Siena has been between Trump tied and +1 or 2, I believe. So I expect their numbers to kind of hold up, because the truth is the race really hasn't been moving that much despite all the lying you're seeing on the mainstream media news. But talking about mainstream polling organizations, you still have these people: Reuters, Ipsos, CBS, Morning Consult, NBC, polls that are perennially left and still seem to be hanging out there. They're either going to like hang out there to keep Harris's number here at the top blue, or they're going to start ducking polls, or they're going to start moving back to the right if they care about being accurate. Now, I looked at the Reuters Ipsos one. I couldn't find crosstabs, but I mean, one of the things that stuck out to me here, still being done by Langer, is that it hit a 4-point margin of error, which is pretty large, a really small poll. Pretty sure they have more money to do a bigger poll than that. I mean, this is like one of the most hotly contested elections in history. And also, I don't go to 538 because I think they're lying scumbags, but 538 shows that Harris is actually leading Trump by more than the Real Clear Politics straight average. So ostensibly a site that's supposed to be correcting for leftward bias is actually adding more. And even still, like they show in here, Trump is leading Harris by 11 points on the economy, and yet Trump is down massive amounts when economy is the number one issue. Pretty crazy. And also, we talked about Pennsylvania in the last video. Our results in the swing state set showed that Trump was tied in Pennsylvania. And also, the Real Clear Politics aggregate shows essentially a tie as well. Harris +0.6, but, you know, that's statistical. But look at all these other pollsters that fell in line with us. A lot of these people, I think, are like local-ish and know the state probably better than we do. And there's some pollsters to the right of us. The Hill and Emerson, I think, has been pretty good this cycle. And there's Quinnipiac out in left field again. And New York Times Siena. Now, I will say they have Harris +4 here in Pennsylvania, but they had Trump +5 in Arizona. I bet what you'd find if we look at the crosstabs is that they're probably oversampling Biden 2020 supporters, just like in Arizona, they oversampled Trump 2020 supporters. Yeah, 46% Biden 2020 to 39 Trump. But we all know that Pennsylvania was way closer than that. So really, what the New York Times Siena here is saying with his Harris +4 is that really the race is tied, just like we showed. Just like their +5 in Arizona for Trump is really showing also a tie. But let's cut to the chase and look at the weekly crosstabs. And it is still Trump +2, 48.4 to 46.4. Exactly Trump +2. If you've been looking at the overnight results, there's more of like a Trump +3 moving average. But again, the moving average is only an estimate of where this validly weighted national scientific poll comes out. Trump is pretty solidly winning men in a much more stable signal, 51 to 44. It's kind of been like this. And we have Harris leading Trump among women by 3 points. I'm happy with that result. I think that's what it's going to be, but the women have sort of been back and forth. Trump is now doing better with the 18 to 39-year-olds again. That might be the glow of August wearing off, but Trump's doing a little tighter with the middle-aged voters. There's probably some up and downs, and is tied among older voters. Trump is taking 28% of the black vote again in that 25 to 30% range, and now Trump's winning the Hispanic vote, 49 to 42, although you do have some other candidates and not sure is a little bit more than normal. No crossover advantage. Still winning by 9 points among independents. Independents are the biggest determinant of the outcome of this election. My polls say Trump is winning the independents and did not in 2020. Everybody who's left still says that Harris is winning independents. Yeah, and look at this. We'll just look at Biden approval too. We don't normally check this out. But Harris is getting 91% of Joe Biden's strong approvers, and Trump is getting 90% of Joe Biden's strong disapprovers. A bigger signal than party, but Harris is getting almost all the somewhat approvers too, and Trump is only getting 50% of the somewhat disapprovers. And also, to be honest with you, a lot of these people aren't going to vote, but these people, I think, have been conditioned to mostly vote. And also, Kamala Harris is winning by 83 to 14 among people who say the country is headed in the right direction. Donald Trump's only getting 75% of the people who say the country's on the wrong track. And so it's things like these that make me wonder, and also the fact that I'm not really picking up a lot of like new voter signal. Maybe Trump is going to perform to the right of us, but you never know. Maybe I get the electorate wrong and he actually performs a little bit to the left of us. Either way, Trump +2 is unlike any previous cycle before. So we still think, as of this date, it looks like a pretty guaranteed Trump win, barring, like I said in a previous video, an act of God for Kamala Harris or some kind of black swan or some kind of like localized flooding event. Now, we're going to look at the overnights before we get to the state stuff. And last two nights have actually been kind of tight. Trump was down 3 points last night. Everybody knows that these are going to swing all over the place because they have a plus or minus 5 margin of error. But this might represent just another hiccup like we had back during the debate. Or it could be the beginning of a new trend. I guess we'll have to see. But again, she still looks pretty much locked in between 46 and 47. And if that's the case, and if that's right, it doesn't really matter. Trump's going to be 48, 49. So we'll keep watching this. But what it does show is that the narratives in the mainstream media of this come from behind victory for Kamala Harris probably are based on cherry picking polls like Morning Consult and not on any actual movement in the race. It took a while for public opinion to congeal around Harris, but again, right after the DNC, she basically hit a ceiling. She poked above it a little during the debate, but that's meager if that's what that signal really is. Maybe it was the Taylor Swift endorsement. But here's the state data. It's a rundown. This is every single state we polled this cycle. The first column is against Biden. The second one, sort of right around the beginning of the DNC, there was not quite the height of euphoria for Harris, but close. And except for Montana and Ohio, which the client wanted, everything was roughly tied here. Arizona was Trump +2, Wisconsin Harris +1, Michigan Harris +1. Now we have 8 of these out, and Trump is still at +2 with Arizona. We're going to look at the Arizona crosstabs. No movement since August. All of that DNC, the debate, everything that happened, another assassination attempt, didn't really seem to change the race. And again, we're weighted in all of these states the recalled vote. So these should be much closer to the actual margin than just looking at the top line number for New York Times Siena. Georgia +3, tighter than the +5 we had back in July, but Harris is a little bit better of a candidate than Trump, and it's closer to the election. I think that pretty much aligns with what people are saying about Georgia here, that it is safe Trump. So we're to a little bit right of the aggregate. New York Times, Siena, Trump +4. Emerson, Trump +3. Looks like a safe Trump win. Michigan, Harris +1, flat from the middle of August. And again, it comes down to like, listen, we don't poll Michigan all the time. Maybe our regions are off or whatever, but like this is better by tons of points than Trump did just 4 years ago. And he actually got relatively close in Michigan. And there's been no movement since August. Nevada, Trump +1, down a point from August. I'm guessing that Nevada is going to be kind of in line with Arizona. I don't know. Maybe Trump +1 is more right. North Carolina. Everybody's been talking about North Carolina because some of the left-leaning pollsters have put polls out showing that it's competitive for Harris. And maybe you can call Trump +3 competitive. It is the margin of error. But it's like probably going to perform to the right of Georgia. One of these is either +1 or -1. I don't know. I think it looks safe for Trump. We just put that out there there wasn't a lot of like actual polls that people could look at from North Carolina. Yeah. The aggregate has North Carolina tied. I think Maris leans left, has North Carolina tie. I don't know what the Emerson's doing here. New York Times, Siena says Trump +2. Fabrizio says Trump +3. That's where we're at. Yeah, I think that's safe. Pennsylvania, we talked about tie. I think Trump's probably really going to do +1 or +2 because of new voters and Scott Pressler and all that other stuff. People wanted Virginia as well to see how close it is. And the headline here is that Harris is leading at the margin of error. So there are your bookends. I think this is pretty clear. Like the most likely outcome is Trump takes North Carolina, Harris takes Virginia. But if the polls are wrong in either direction, a significant amount at the state level, then one of them might get both. Wisconsin tied 1 point closer to Trump since the middle of August. All right. Now, we already went through the Pennsylvania crosstabs in gory detail. These are available at rasmussenreports.com for free. 4 of them are up now. By the time you're watching the video, it'll probably be all 8 of them. Really good size sample in Arizona. And we're just going to hit the highlights as not to repeat ourselves. The economy is still the #1 issue in Arizona. Borders #2, combined total of 55% of them. But 15% of Arizonans believe abortion is the #3 issue. And the party numbers are Democrats actually care more about the economy in Arizona than abortion, but it's really close. And independents and Republicans agree economy. Republicans care most about border security. Maybe that's because they're closer to the border down there. Republicans don't care that much about abortion. The ones that do are probably pro-life. And only 15% of independents care about abortion. Now, in this issue's question, unlike the other states, legal immigration is #1 issue in Arizona. 31% combine that to get 58% rising prices in illegal immigration. But among Democrats, protecting our democracy and abortion rights take 64%. Abortion rights are #1 for Democrats here. I think protecting democracy was #1 in Pennsylvania. If the elections for Congress were held today, this is a generic ballot. Republicans doing really well, 49 to 45. Senate, Kari Lake down 2. Likely will do better than this because of straight ticket voting that doesn't show up in the polls. And this is also the best she's been doing in any of our polling this year. So maybe it's an outlier to the right, or maybe she has a really good chance of riding some Trump coattails to a victory here. This is one to watch. And also in Pennsylvania, too, that was the tightest race. That hit McCormick tied. So the Senate might be looking up for Republicans, especially if there's movement over the next month as people get into October and have that gut check. Or of course, if there's some kind of October surprise. And here's the matchup. Trump 49 to Harris 47. Independents are actually going to Harris by 2 points here. This might just be the sample, and maybe in reality, I could have gotten independents more from one county than another. if the national trend holds, then Trump will do better among independents and open up more of a lead here. And Trump's not doing as well among Republicans as Harris is among Democrats. Let's just check the religious vote too, because I always like stopping in on that one. And Trump is winning over 30 points with evangelicals. Wow. Those are some pretty based Protestants. 14% Trump lead, Catholics going to Trump, Jewish voters going to Harris pretty strongly, Muslim voters going to Harris, atheist voters going to Harris, but not nearly as much as nationally. And she's winning the others too. Check. We don't need to go into favorability, but in Arizona, voters say that Kamala Harris and the Democrats pose a greater threat to democracy. But everybody's tied on who is a bigger threat of dictatorship. Some of this was like the questions were kind of confusing in the order we put them in. But in Arizona, only 34% of likely voters say they were better off than they were 4 years ago. Only 17% say today's children will be better off than their parents. This is colossally worse than the numbers, even in Pennsylvania. Only 17% think children are going to have it better than only 24% of Democrats. That's incredible. Who's the most optimistic? Maybe it's black voters at 35% saying yes. But wow, really, it's just like across the board, everybody. Even Biden 2020 voters, only 23% of them think today's children will be better off than their parents. My advice to the Trump campaign, run a forward-looking, hope-driven campaign where you focus on the impact of your policies and how they will improve the lives of everybody. Harris could do that also. I mean, I think she should, if she can start an answer with something other than how she was raised as a middle class. People who watch CNN are most likely in Arizona to say today's children will be better off than their parents. Interesting. MSNBC not far behind, but the Newsmax people are super concerned about the direction of the country. And here's the big one. We're seeing the same signal we saw in Pennsylvania. Arizona voters say that the number one enemy facing America is the Democrat Party. China's number two. Republican Party is a distant third. Democrats say Republicans are the biggest enemy by 31%. Republicans say Democrats by 40%. And independents here do not have the Democrat Party first like in Pennsylvania, but the Democrats are tied with China, and only 12% of independents say Republicans, 15% say domestic extremists. There's a lot more we could look at, including energy policy and character and the gender stuff. But since Arizona is pretty close to the border, we're going to talk about illegal immigration. And Arizonans want a 100% deportation candidate over a 100% amnesty candidate by 51% to 33% among Democrats. Wow. Democrats in Arizona are actually really pro-amnesty, way more than in Pennsylvania, 62% to 24%. But independents say deportation, 43% to 28%. And again, I think that's a left-leaning independent sample. 66% of Arizona voters say the government is doing too little to stop illegal immigration. Only 7% say too much. Democrats, 44% too little, 7% too much. Independents, it's 70% too little to 4% too much. And even talking about legal immigration, Arizona voters want way less than we currently have. This question says that we get about 1 million legal immigrants a year, and 54% of Arizona voters want a number less than the current number, 23% of whom say zero, and only 11% of voters say they want a higher level than what we have now. So again, I've said this lots of times, polling's getting harder, and we do really trust our polling. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a sample of, not every single American. There's just no way to reach anybody anymore. And the type of person that picks up the phone or responds to an email to answer a poll might not represent the people that are just showing up to the ballot box to vote. And in these polls, they say overwhelmingly on almost every issue, they trust Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris. But then when it comes down to it, it's roughly tie. Those people don't care. They're still voting blue no matter who. Now, here's where things can swing big, and I can kind of try to predict what's going to happen on election day, but I think my job is to report the state of the race with the numbers I see now, not to use a crystal ball and try and guess who's going to turn out. And if the issues wind up really mattering, you're going to see some Harris supporters sit it out, and you're going to see some quiet Trump supporters show up for the very first time. And that's how you can get another massive polling miss, even as far as our numbers go. I'm not trying to be inaccurate, but there's only so much I can do. You're following me to see data, not guesses. And my hunch is that Trump is going to outperform our numbers, because when you have a couple of like high quality pollsters who agree with us that Trump is doing better than at any point in time in the past decade almost at the national popular vote, and swing state polling is hard, and the swing states are pretty much locked in a tie, even with all the lefty polling organizations lumped in, it looks like Trump might have a really good election night. So I hope you learned a lot. I would really appreciate you liking the video and following us on YouTube and Rumble, Rasmussen_poll. You can follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll as well. And my account also at Mark_R_Mitchell. It's kind of the same type of discussions as our main account, just with a lot more sarcasm. Hope to see you there, and thanks for watching.